church, about death and faith, about life. So how do you do that? Well, we worked real hard at finding things in Sports Illustrated. And to be honest, nowadays, YouTube would be great. Because you can find just little snippets about stuff that, the gal, Susan Boyle, do you remember when all of a sudden, Anita and I made that part of our devotional life almost, in that when that first happened, we would watch it before having devotions and then going to bed, because emotionally that did something to us. And you know what it did? It was, everybody was making fun of this woman, and she came out and you saw the judges roll their eyes and isn't she stupid and all this kind of stuff. And then you watched a human transformation. And it wasn't just her. She started singing and it was beautiful. But you watched these people who had been jeering and heckling, and you saw them change. Well, my dear friends, to be honest, as a pastor, I wanted to see somebody change for the good. And every night I watched that YouTube so that I experienced it anew. That's transformation, that only God can do that kind of stuff. Do you hear what I'm saying? You look and you search for that kind of stuff that helps them to think about real life and today. And then I believe number 3 under that category is reverse learning. Meaning, as the years went by, we did more and more service projects than classroom stuff. We cleaned windows, we raked yards, we went to the pantry in town and filled shelves, and you just find stuff. And if you can't find need, you're not paying attention in this way. But what I found was, and this is part of why we believe in mission trips and all this, is sometimes you do, and then you believe. And us Lutherans, for far too long, we've treated everybody like a garbage can, that you lift the lid and you pour knowledge in and think it's going to work. On the mission trips, every night you ask the kids, where did you see Jesus? And the first night you get grunts and groans, and it's pretty soon time to pray, so we're free of this. And by the 5th night, you can't shut the kids up. You know, today, when I was with this person who was off the street, it was amazing the life they've lived. And they feel God's protected them. Where did you see Jesus? And I just believe it's in the doing that it comes alive. Now, if you doubt that, there's a lot of things in this life that are of that way. I played tennis in college, and how you hold the racket and how you swing it is not always natural, but you just got to keep doing it, and all of a sudden you're hitting that ball better. Okay? My wife believes that as I just empty the dishwasher, I become a better human being. What amazes me is
You do.
I do, at least in her eyes. But do you hear what I'm saying? We too often have thought, you got to get it here first. And I think, you know, Jesus worked really hard at having people try to live together and be and do. And then they were asking different questions. And I think that shapes. Filter. You want to do the piece. We've got enough. I love this. You don't want to turn them into a fan of Jesus, but a follower of Jesus. And that's in the doing. That's in the what do you think? How do you respond? You know, a few years ago, it was great to do the WWJD. What would Jesus do? I mean, that's a confirmation teaching in and of itself. And you can hook the catechism right to that. What do you think Jesus would do in this situation? There used to be a game called Scruples. Did any of you ever play that? That's meant for confirmation class. You get a situation and you ask the kids, how would you respond? And then you say, tell me, is there anything in the Bible that might help us with this? What story in the Bible fits this one? Different way of teaching. But again, trying to make it relevant. If you were at the panel last night with the kids, you heard that over and over again. We just want the church to be relevant. It's the so what question. At the end of class, we used to have that as the main question. Each kid has to answer So what did it mean to you to be in confirmation tonight? Did it make any difference? Do is say, we didn't just take up space and fill time in somehow. So at the end of every class, so what? So what that we were... Number 3. One of the goals is that we want them to keep baptismal promises, pray, and talk to God. We made of confirmation. Let me tell you, during the interview time, usually a book out of the Bible, let's say St. Luke's, and we take these in a prayer. Okay? And the questions related to what those 3 or 4 verses. And then we'd hand them out at the interview time and say, we want to do family devotions together. And when do you think you'll do that? The dad who said, do you know, Pastor, we don't have time. And then, what I believe to be a wonderful pastoral, and what I would do is I look down at the floor and count how many laces eventually that dad says, but that's not good, is it? You hear what I'm saying? They're the ones that want their kid in confirmation. To get to those goals is, if you're not talking to God once a day, is that relationship? You as a family, and this is a real window into families. If you don't have time for 10 minutes to read a Bible, a couple Bible verses, and answer a question and read a prayer, then are you a family? Can we ask those questions? Or are you just ships that pass in the night? I heard from so many families, you know, Pastor, we don't even eat together. And how do you respond to that? But that's not good, is it? You let people discover this is healthy for them, isn't it? We live in a society that if we never just stop and say, what is important to us? What are our priorities? Why do you want the kid in confirmation? And my fear is, what we want is what we're going to do is inoculate them so they never really get the disease. Do you know what's an inoculation? It's when you get just a little tiny bit of the disease in you, and so that it builds up antibodies so you never get it. And to be honest, that's Lutheran confirmation in the 1970s and 80s and 90s. Give them a little bit of religion and a little bit of Jesus, and then they'll stay away forever. So what we're trying to do is deepen that whole kind of question. And so, family devotions became time that was just important. Now, how do you know if they're doing it? Oh, dear Nate, I hope this brings back a happy memory or a horror. 2 circle 7. Now, what does that mean? That means that when kid came to confirmation, we took attendance. It means I was in worship, that's 1. I went to Sunday school, that's 2. And I took sermon notes. I get a circle. What do you think the 7 is?
Devotions.
Did you do devotions? Now, we had to pound into the kids that you can't do devotions on the way to confirmation for the whole week. Praying real hard, and I'm reading the questions and doing. You got to be honest. And you know what? This is part of setting up a safe place to grow. If you got a kid from the beginning saying 2 circle 7, it ain't real, okay? You need to have 1, 3. And you try to build it. But you want them honest, first of all. If they're going to be a follower of Jesus the Christ, they need to be honest. And so, let's talk that way. But do you see, that's a way to check in. Is this stuff really happening at home? Is it just, I get them for an hour, and to be honest, I can't do much in an hour when they got 127 hours everywhere else. But what we're trying to do is make this stuff follow through, okay? What number are we on? 4? Can I go to 4? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Evening session with parents. We would do 4 to 5 evening sessions with parents a year. And going to be brutally honest, this was my real cop-out, okay? And that there's some subjects that I don't want to just talk to the kids about. I want the parents to relearn or rehear or re-know. Now, what are those subjects? Tell me, you know them.
Adultery.
Sex.
Or sex.
Yeah, let's not go to adultery
Sorry.
right away.
I'm sorry about that.
Sex. So we would have what is called a Christian understanding of sexuality. There was an evening session with parents.
Now, this is just the parents?
The parents and the kids.
Okay.
Parents and the kids. Let me tell you again, awkward is the word. You know, number one is I as pastor didn't want to be talking to the kids about sex without their parents so that they go home and say, oh, you sure pastor.
Yeah.
And having the parents there helped. I didn't have one parent ever upset about it. I had parents saying, thank you for talking about this. And you know what I used those nights? Joseph and Potiphar's wife. That's a great story when you want to talk about sex, because you get to use phrases that the kids are really amazed came out of the pastor's mouth. She was warm for his form. That sticks with a kid, okay? And what do you think of Potiphar's wife? What was her main problem? She's horny, Pastor. Yeah, isn't that amazing? And so, you hear what I'm saying? And the parents are grateful. I was able to say things that I could never have said to the kid, but with the parents sitting there, I could. And one was a simple phrase. I heard it from one of our parents and kids. One of the dads said, you know what? My folks never talked to me about sex, and when I went on my first date, my dad said, just don't get in trouble. And I had no idea what that meant. But my grandmother said, you keep your pants on all the time when you were with a girl. I never wondered what that meant. But do you hear? I can't say that to an 8th grader, but with an 8th grader sitting with his parents, the parents say, oh, thanks, Pastor. Now we can talk about it. Do you hear? This is a gift the church gives. What other, besides sex? Evening session with parents. Money. Yeah. And you know what? The goal was for the parents to hear some things that needed to be said. Maybe more than the kids. Because the kids are really honest. Yeah, money is a god in our heart. That's a fascinating thing for a kid to say with the parents. And they do. But you talk about, how do we as Christians understand money? What does it mean? And what are the Bible passages you talk about? Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God. Well, what does it mean to be created in the image of God? You see, kids can get that, but parents have forgotten that. Meaning, I'm God's, and therefore everything I have is God's, and now I manage it. Other topics, evening sessions with parents.